I've asked you to prepare three things that you would tell your nearest and dearest. Three tips. If you could only tell your nearest and dearest three things that would help them minimize their tax going forward, not only next year, but forever more thereafter, what would those three things be?
Well, the first one is basically every business owner has the right to take up to €2 million from his or her company, invested in his or her pension, and pay not a single penny in taxation on that. You asked me what is the greatest piece of tax planning legislation on the statute books today. I would definitely answer it is the part of the 1972 Finance Act that introduced business owners could fund retirement funds for themselves with tax-free money. Only 50% of business owners in Ireland, Colm, have any sort of retirement plan at all, and less than 10% of them maximize their allowances. So you've got this wealth of allowances available that are ignored by a huge percentage of small and medium-sized enterprise owners. People think their business is their pension. People think, I don't need a pension. And it's not about needing it or the business is your pension. It's about recognizing that, as you well know, if you have money in your limited company, the money comes into the limited company, it gets taxed. And then if you take it out of the limited company, it gets taxed. There's double taxation on money within our companies. But a retirement fund allows money to leave the company without taxation.
Are there limits to that?
The limits are still very generous. There are limits. And if you'd asked me that question 10, 15 years ago, the limits, the number I'd be giving you would be higher than the number I'm about to give you. But basically, every business owner has the right to take up to €2 million from his or her company, invested in his or her pension, and pay not a single penny in taxation on that. Now, that's the maximum limit, Colm. It's based on salary as well, but I won't get into
No, there's criteria.
that. But so, yeah, there's criteria to qualify for that maximum. Okay. But, it's somewhere between €1 and €2 million tax-free.
Okay, cool. And if there are two people in said business, husband and wife, let's say, do they have to split that?
Well, no, they don't. They can have €4 million. So, there's an idea that if in a married couple scenario, one is employed and one isn't, one of the planning arrangements I help my clients make is bring their spouse, in that case, into the business, create a salary for them, create years of service for them, and give yourself the opportunity to have a double bite at that 2 million cherry.
Okay, great. And again, going back to what we said at the very start of this, all of this is absolutely permissible under the law of the land.
Absolutely. This is the law of the land. This is 50-year-old legislation indeed. That it might be worth saying, Colm, that it's interesting, isn't it, that it's sat on the statute books for 50 years and less than half of business owners use it. And I think there's probably a reason for that. And the reason is that the legislation was all but hijacked by the insurance companies, and they built these things called pension plans around them. So I think one of the reasons many business owners don't utilize these allowances is they see them as only available by buying insurance policies from, commission remunerated product sellers.
Okay.
And that's not the case. I mean, private pension funds are available. They don't have commissions attaching to them. They have much more flexible investment availability. So my hope is that, if I incentivize one business owner out there to go and check out, these allowances for himself or herself, I'll be delighted. This was time well spent.
Or indeed themselves, in the case of a couple running a business.
Or indeed themselves in the case of a couple, yes.
You mentioned in terms of planning for this type of event, you mentioned about if there's one person in the business and one partner, husband and wife not in the business, that it would be possible to create a role and as you say, allow them that opportunity. So are there any other opportunities within the family? I think the second thing you wanted to talk about was pay the family in terms of reducing your taxable income.
Absolutely. I was only talking to a client today, for example, who has two daughters in college, and they're going on the Erasmus year next year, which is going to cost him around 10,000 euro per daughter. And he was saying, well, that's going to cost me 20,000 euro per daughter in salary, because I have to declare 20,000 to put 10,000 in my back pocket to give it to my daughter. And I said, well, not necessarily.